Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello guys, welcome back to part 2 of the podcast. This is obviously the part where I look back at your Instagram responses about the films you chose for our previous episode, your picks. And it'll be a new Instagram segment as well, social media segment, which will be fun. So that last episode was Matthew Vaughn films, and Anton Kinnerlove went with Kingsman from 2015, The Secret Service, and Liz from the B Critics went with Argyle, as she always seems to see films early.
Oh, flexing.
So jealous. I'm curious, guys, what's your Matthew Vaughn film of choice?
I'm going to say Stardust because it's the most unique one. Everything else kind of follows the same kind of type of story.
Action, gangstery, violent stuff.
Bit sarcastic, ironic, yeah. Stardust, though, is whimsical and wholesome. So
yeah, Kingsman is pretty cool. I do love that one.
Oh, to be fair, yeah.
Taron Egerton, just a great, first major role for him.
Colin Firth, lovely as always.
Yeah. Makes it look so effortless in those action scenes. But this episode, we are talking biopics. And for me, I found this kind of really hard to choose. And when Sam was messaging me saying, "So what's your pick then?" I'm like, I don't know. Give me some time. So I did think about a lot, like maybe picking Oppenheimer, but it's only just recently came out. But I do love that one. And I thought it would be interesting to go with Amadeus as well. That's a really interesting one that I saw a long, long time ago. And Christopher Nolan kind of references that film a lot in the terms of the Mozart and the other guy, I can't remember now, their kind of relationship in that film. He used a lot for Robert Downey Jr.'s relationship with Cillian Murphy, Oppenheimer. With that dynamic, he borrowed that a lot, which is really interesting. So I was tempted to go with either of those two films, but with a lot of these, they're really long, like 3 hours.
Yeah, you made a good choice. Thank God you didn't make us watch Oppenheimer.
And I didn't have a lot of time this week. Like another good film, which I really love, me and my brother watch a lot, is The Wolf of Wall Street. That's a great biopic of like a really despicable human being.
Yeah.
That you kind of laugh at.
Oh, some don't.
And sometimes love with, and it kind of definitely laugh with. Sorry, you definitely are challenged in that way when you watch that film. So I kind of went with a film that's kind of similar in that vein of The Wolf of Wall Street with I, Tonya, and also because I think it's just interesting to look back at probably, arguably, the biggest movie star around right now, and that's Margot Robbie, who plays the title character, Tonya Harding. Yeah, she's pretty huge and she's pretty amazing in this. Yeah, I really like this one. So what happens in I, Tonya? Well, a competitive ice skater, Tonya Harding, rises amongst the ranks at the US Figure Skating Championships, but her future in the activity is thrown into doubt when her ex-husband intervenes, where there's a bit of a conspiracy where you don't really know the truth, and there's a lot of different accounts going on about a particular incident where a rival skater, Nancy Kerrigan, is injured. Someone assaults her, kneecap gets broken basically, and yeah, a lot of people thought the husband did it, or did actually Tonya Harding do it, or did she know about it? It's kind of very up in the air, and this is very much a unreliable narrative type story in a biopic. So it's really interesting in that sense. And again, a similar story of a very kind of controversial figure, kind of like DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street as well. So Guys, what did you make of this one? Initial reactions, Calum?
So I was trying to work out why, because again, actually, this was another film that I wasn't not only not familiar with, like I actually hadn't heard of this before until we came to watch it for this.
Right.
It was released on the year that Sam and I graduated from university.
Okay.
Several months after the fact. So I don't know about, I can't remember what your time frame was, Sam, but for me, I would have been deep in the depths of trying to hurriedly job hunt to find something to not move back with my parents at the time, so I wasn't focused an awful lot on film releases, probably for about 3 or 4 months after we graduated.
I worked in the cinema and I didn't want to watch a bloody film ever again.
Yeah, were you aware of this one being released at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were at least.
Yeah, all the old ladies went to see it and they were the ones that treat me the worst, so as you do.
I was pleasantly surprised by this. There's a lot of really interesting choices made throughout, both in terms of how the story is told, but I think in terms of the casting as well. I mean, I don't know if either of you two went to this extent, but I went and looked up some of the videos of the real Tonya Harding skating after the fact. So I went to see her, was it the 1994 Olympic skating incident, I think. I watched, for example, the footage of her in the Olympics when halfway through she starts crying and she goes to show the judges her boot. And they did a pretty great recreation of that. But in terms of the actual casting, now it was Julianne Nicholson who was starring as Diane Rawlinson, who was the skating coach. If you look at the clip from the Olympics, when you see Diane talking to Tonya, the casting is fantastic. She's got the haircut down, just everything. It's really good. Just the effort that was put into recreating some of these scenes. I'm still not entirely convinced I understand how they recreated some of the actual skating segments. I know there'll be some CGI in there. That there might be some stunt doubles effectively going in and doing it.
You can definitely tell that they've stuck Margot Robbie's face on the stunt sometimes.
No. Margot Robbie's a professional skater. Did you not know that? Did you not know that?
I did not.
She's a Barbie too.
I know she trained. I know she trained a lot for the skating sequences, but yeah, you can tell a little bit that they've stuck her face on the stunt woman.
But the scenes that were recreated for this, and I must say as well, again, I wasn't familiar really with the story of Tonya Harding, and I wonder if to an extent that's because, one, the time frame in which all this happened, I was born but barely, but two, it's a bit of an American scandal more than I would say a worldwide scandal in many ways, and also not for nothing, but ice skating's kind of niche in some ways as well. I was kind of laughing about the idea of this film about ice skating has so much drama in it. It kind of does though. But anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, but that's my kind of thoughts there.
Sam, initial reactions for you?
So I actually knew about the controversy beforehand because, believe it or not, I don't know if Calum even knows this, I really wanted to be a figure skater when I was a kid. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh wow, okay.
But they are right in saying it's definitely not a poor person's sport. It's super expensive. And then you have to travel to the skating rink. You have to pay for coaches. So yeah, that dream never happened for me. But my sister did get horse riding lessons. So,
not bitter.
Don't sound bitter at all.
No. It's fine. It's all good. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by it too. It's a bit like watching JFK documentaries, you know what I mean? Where they try and sell you this narrative of what definitely happened. I know they're saying it's unreliable, but in the film they're showing us that, she definitely didn't really know what was happening. And I'm not entirely convinced, because we don't know what happened. And they definitely presented her as more of a victim of life, and she was a victim of life, but definitely she was definitely, the victim of this story in her story. And I'm not entirely convinced. I don't know. No. But I obviously I don't know. Maybe she was.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's quite clever about this film, is that this is not the absolute truth. This is just kind of the filmmakers playing with what they have, all the kind of contradicting statements that they have available, and they're kind of let's kind of make a really fun film about what we have. and see where we go.
That's my problem with it, is that they're presenting it as a comedy, right? There's some really horrible things going on.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, like there's child abuse, and it's like, haha, child abuse. And I'm like, fuck. You know, there's domestic violence. There's some stuff from, like, I guess a black comedy, but like...
It's definitely controversial, and certainly the domestic violence stuff kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, Sebastian Stan, like, randomly just punches Margot Robbie in the face.
Yeah.
On many occasions, you're like, where the hell did that come from?
But it's played for laughs, you know what I mean? And I don't know, something about that. Like, don't get me wrong, I still like the film overall, but some parts of it tonally rubbed me the wrong way just because of how grim some of the story is, and some of the fourth wall breaking I found that confusing, because for the first half they didn't do that, and suddenly in the second half they're constantly talking to the audience like, oh, she really did this. I'm like, okay, I kind of figured, like, why would you add it in if she hadn't done it? But no, overall, interesting take on the subject. And it was nice that they didn't just vilify the poor person for being the poor person. They were showing some of the flaws in the institution of ice skating, and I guess professional sport in general, because there is definitely a position of privilege you can be in if you're richer for doing sports. And that is my take. Very rambling. More rambling than Calum's. Not great, but, you know, we got through.
There's definitely a sense that, like, no matter what she does and how well she performs, she's just not gonna, like, succeed at the highest level compared to a lot of her competitors, because she's, you know, low status from the South, etc.
But she doesn't help herself.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the
she
thing.
Deliberately goes out her way to, like, say, I'm different, and I'm like, sometimes you do need to play the game, girl.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
She's just not willing to do that, or
No.
doesn't have the smarts to really try to do that.
She's like the opposite of Jonathan Larson, our last.
Yeah. A little
The
bit.
exact opposite story.
So directing then, I loved the first skating sequence because I was worried that it wouldn't feel that dynamic or very impactful up against like the quite visceral and sudden violence that we've just seen between like Tonya and her boyfriend Jeff, played by Sebastian Stan. So when like the skating sequence happens, the first one, it's like the cameraman at times is as close as possible to Margot or the stunt woman, and like half the time the camera is like spinning in the opposite direction to Tonya, so it feels very fast to watch. Like, and also they use a lot of like long takes, and it's always very impressive when they do that. So the first skating sequence was very impressive for me.
I think in some ways there's no choice but to do it that way, isn't there, really? 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're watching someone actually do this for real, there are long segments between their maneuvers, or, you know, there is a little bit of just kind of like running or skating into position just so that you can do your next jump or your next like leap or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I think in some ways it has no choice but to have these long lingering shots. If they were to have done it in a way that chopped everything up, I wonder if that would have been quite jarring. I suppose having the technology and the skills of the cast involved, however they were involved, that allowed them to do it in the way that they've done it was definitely to the film's benefit.
Yeah, I had the same kind of worry, like moving forward. Like you have this quite like amazing like first skating sequence, then I was like, how are they going to change things up and like create variations in the direction of the skating sequence? But there is kind of like some like slow motion stuff in the second one, but in most of the skating sequences, it's pretty much shot the same way. But in this film, it has a secret weapon. At the Winter Olympics in France, Tonya is about to do like a triple axel, and you get the impression that she might not make it this time, as she's fallen a few times. So when she takes off, the film like cuts to her interview scene quite jarringly in a good way for me, and says there was a problem with my skate blade. So then I was pretty sure she was going to fall. Then when she says, that wasn't my fault, then I loved this great little montage sequence that says like 2 months earlier, where she's like drinking, playing pool, on the weighing scales, looking at the camera, smiling, slightly embarrassed. You know, the montage lasts for like 5 to 10 seconds to create that burst of comedy. So I loved the kind of surprise there, that you have this build up of her jump that you're like, oh, is she going to make it? And then you have this kind of interview cut into it, which I found was great.
I like the ice skating in Blades of Glory better.
Oh, Sam.
It was good though.
Different.
Like Blades of Glory ice skating, man.
Yeah,
10 out of 10.
that is a great film.
But to be fair, they did it first. So it's not Tonya's fault.
No,
It's just that
it's
they
not.
did it first. They did the slow-mo with the cutting his little stubble with a blade. Like, come on.
I suppose in some ways as well, though, like, this film is... I mean, I kind of trivialized it a bit earlier, being like, this film about ice skating. Like, ice skating's, I guess, the framework around which the foundation upon which the film is built, but it's really kind of about everything that's going on outside of that, like her upbringing, and then her relationship with Jeff, and then her continued difficult relationship with her mother, and everything else outside of that. So, like, yeah, I suppose there's enough focus on the skating that it works, but it's not overdone to the point where focus is drawn away from where it probably needs to be.
Yeah, you don't ever miss the skating stuff. The skating stuff is great, but like, yeah, you don't miss it, I don't think.
Yeah, she sat there like having a tough time with Jeff, and you're like, oh, this is really engaging, but I really want to see if she can do another twirl,
Yeah.
Yeah, where's your triple axel at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a subplot of her hair. Her hair was so like awful. Like, not just at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you've made Margot Robbie look a bit rough with the haircuts, just off the haircuts.
Yeah, she's probably the least glamorous she's ever been.
Yeah, and ever will be. They did a good job of that because she is obviously stunning. Like,
Barbie, this is not.
No. Even the makeup, like, they did a good job of just showing that she's doing it herself and not doing it well, because she's obviously not a girly girl. She said that multiple times.
Yeah.
So she looks a bit like she's in drag up top, but then the dresses are like my first sewing bee, like not great.
Favorite scene or shot for you, Calum?
There's a scene where I think it's the first time she skates out in a real competition. Now, I think it was the 1991. Was it the 1991 thing? She skates out onto the ice and she comes directly towards the camera, and there's these two spotlights either side of her. And she stops, and it pans back, and you've got this view of the skate plus the people in the... You can't really see the audience as such, but you can tell there's people there in the darkness. And I just thought it was so... It's such a weird bit to select in a way. But like, I just thought there's something really beautiful about this specific shot, and the way that she is purely the focus in this big arena. That the use of space and the use of sound and the use of lighting there was just... For me, it's probably one of my favorite individual little like scenelets.
Yeah.
In terms of, I suppose, wider scenes, I enjoyed the confrontation she has with her mum at the end. I said a confrontation, the attempted reconciliation, only to find out that the mum's got a recording device in her pocket when she comes to visit her at home. I thought that was quite shocking in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
It's in line with the character or the way that her mum's portrayed. And yet I was still shocked as well when it turned out that she had this recording device on her as well. I was like, she has no one in her corner, basically. Like, it's
completely
really unfortunate. So that I would highlight that as well for me, honestly.
Sam?
There's a couple of ones I liked a lot. I liked the one where it's Sebastian Stan in different parts of the house when they're first getting their first divorce, when she's like narrating that they're doing divorce, just because it looked like, I don't know, it just looked very film schooly, and I liked that. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretentious in a good way. Lots of this was pretentious in a good way. There was parts where, like, they said the line at the same time and it was like cut, and I was like, oh, me and Cal would have done that for a 48-hour.
Like split screen, you mean? Like
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, when they said the line at the same time, but in different ways. I really liked that. I think one of my favourite scenes was when they had the fight with the mum, when she threw the knife and it stuck into her arm. I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I was just like, what the fuck?
That was the moment.
That was the biggest what the fuck moment for me. That when she got shot by her husband.
Oh my god.
I'm like, the hell? Like, the worst people are doing the worst things to you just for shock.
Yeah, there's a lot of great shock moments. I think for me, like, my favourite scenes were kind of with Paul Waterhouse's character, Sean. Like, I love how stupid they make some of these characters, especially him. Like, and they mainly do it with like pacing and quick cuts. I love the little sequence where Sebastian Stan and Paul Waterhouse are like traveling in his car with a few cuts in quick succession. Like, Paul is talking and we go from day to night and then back to day again, all in a few lines of dialogue. And it's all in like one shot and they're all on this kind of like side view of these two characters, but in the last cut back today, like Paul's not in the passenger seat, like the camera like pans around and he's got his shirt off, like scoffing food, and there's like dried peanut butter on his chest hair. It's just really funny image anyway, but like the delivery of it kind of makes it amazing. And then later when like Sebastian Stan is like freaking out about Paul Waterhauser has talked to the FBI about Derek and Shane, who assaulted Nancy, like he completely denies it charismatically, and then we cut to these series of great like push-in shots on Paul talking to all these different people in quick succession. So that was really well done for me. Directing score, guys, what are you going for I, Tonya?
I think it's kind of hard in some ways, because I think your point about it being quite film student-y in some ways is valid. It depends whether that's a like a positive or a negative, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. What do you think? Because like you mentioning 48-hour film festival, yeah, it does feel a little bit like that at points.
It'd be really impressive if it wasn't there, wouldn't it? You'd be like, oh wow, you had
yeah.
No, because that's like there's things that we did, and I was like, oh, we nailed it. But then if I saw it in the big film, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a bit beneath it in some ways, it kind of feels. And yet, I don't know.
I really enjoyed it, but I really didn't like the fourth wall break. Sometimes I think they used them too often, but overall, it was a really well-constructed way of telling that story. Like, I don't know how else you would do it.
Yeah, I would agree. Because it's not bad is the thing. So, like, it's...
Oh, God, no.
It's not bad. What do you think? I'll put a stab and you can go higher or lower. 7, higher or lower?
I'm between 7 or 8.
Shall we go for 7 then, since I said 7, and if you're between 7 and 8, we'll just...
Do you think I'm just copying you?
Oh.
Go 8.
What was that? Go 7? Okay, right. 7 it is.
7. Final answer?
Yeah.
See if you say 10, we're going to look like we're cheating the system.
So I'm going 10. No, I really like this. I think Craig Gillespie does a great job here. It might be his first film, I'm not sure, but
no,
I think he does a great job of like mixing tones here with the comedy, and like you really don't know what's true and what's not. And I think that that works in its favor for me. And I just love this style with the inserts of the interviews. I think it's so effective. And I kind of like a little bit of a controversial story, certainly within the filmmaking here. So yeah, I'll probably go like an 8.6.
That's fair.
Yeah. I just love the flair and the confidence that they're really going for it in this.
I think the fact that we've made films that are similar to this, like our last 48-hour film was like a documentary style where you did interviews and then you cut to little bits of action. It was mostly interviews. I think that's actually a detriment because I just realised how easy that was. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of presentation, yeah, I interviews are a great framing device, but they're quite easy to set up in that way. Like it's easy to set up a fake interview scenario. Yeah, I kind of get what you mean a bit. I
kind of wish it'd been more like they started off with the interviews and they didn't keep cutting to them as a thing to rely on to keep the narrative going. I wish there was more of a... I just want to see the stuff. I don't want to be kept getting brought out to hear their opinions. I just want to see their opinions, being shown, not told what they thought, maybe. But again, not bad film. Not bad at all.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about like the interview inserts here is that these are very much characters that they're basing on real life people, obviously, but there's a lot of stuff in here where like, there's just no way they said this. So there's a lot of like license they have, I feel like, in creating these characters, and like, we're going to use this to the best effect possible to tell our story, and I really like that.
No, I can see that. I just, as the thing is, I took the actual incident. I feel like it's very underplayed, as it would be if it was her story, but the reality is that was a really horrendous thing to happen to someone. You know what I mean? Like Nancy's story is kind of thrown under.
No, we know literally little to nothing about Nancy, her rival. We just see it through Tonya and Jeff's eyes. That's it, really.
Yeah, which is both good and bad.
Yeah,
that's it.
You're always going to have a double-edged sword with that when you go down that direction.
The only thing we do get about Nancy is that she goes on to the Olympics and then wins silver, and then she's like, oh, and she had the audacity to look bitter about winning silver at the same time, and you think...
It's like, because you hit her in the leg, so she was like down.
Well, yeah, to be fair, like, she wasn't, she didn't literally do the strike, but...
Well, I wouldn't be ecstatic if I could have won.
Yeah. I suppose that's it, isn't it? And to be fair, actually, linking this back to the previous film, there is an element of time not being on your side here as well. So not explicitly in the film itself, but just in terms of Olympians. Obviously, like, you're training really, really hard for this. The Olympics comes around every 4 years generally, except in the instance here where they were brought forward for 2 years. So, but you do have, as an athlete, you do have a shelf life.
Oh, that one, yeah, I'll agree.
You only get so many attempts at this, so you can understand why people would be bitter and why it would be potentially life ruining if you're knocked out through reasons that are not directly linked to your own doing. So
I mean, even from the fact that you have a ticking time bomb here, because like a lot of these characters are stupid, and I'm like, you are going to get caught. You have not done this very well at all in trying to assault a rival figure skater.
Yeah.
Or just threaten her.
Yeah.
Just threaten her.
You're going to get caught at some point. We're just waiting for it to happen.
It's a different era, isn't it? I suppose, but just the casual nature within, we'll just send some death threats or some threats in the mail, it'll be fine. Like, just the casual nature of which people throw that out there, I just was like, oh, that's very... Very,
But then the story that the friend's the one that threatened Tonya as well, and I'm like, all right, sure, Jan. I mean, like, it's just, I don't know. It's a very unreliable narrator, but I guess that's what you have to work with on this.
Yeah. So, screenplay, then, I love the writing here in the beginning where they're almost picking fun at the biopic itself. With having like lots of different accounts of what happened. It's like they have so many different accounts, they're not even going to bother to try and find out the actual truth. They're going to make something that works really well in this comedic fashion that serves all the characters regardless if it's true or not. And and you have some fun with it. Saying that, though, I feel like in the second half of the film, your sympathies kind of turn towards Tonya and against Jeff and Sean a bit more. But towards the end, this unreliable narrator comes through more with this hearing in the boxing scenes at the end where she says, the haters always say, Tonya, tell the truth. There's no such thing as truth. I mean, it's bullshit. Everyone has their own truth. Life does whatever the fuck it wants. So by the end, you don't really know who to believe. But I never felt frustrated by the end. Stories like this are always kind of messy, and I love the fact that the filmmakers acknowledge that. Even though there's like almost moments where you feel like a certain character is telling the truth, you kind of get sucked in a little bit. I'm like, Tonya is telling the truth here in this moment, but by the end you're like, oh, okay, I'm not sure, but I was never frustrated.
So I have a pet peeve with the concept of it's with the concept of like my truth, like people's like no, there's no your truth, there is the truth and there's your perception, and I think that's what's confused here is when she says the line about truth specifically. Just let me get that in front of me just so that I've got there's no such thing as the truth, it's bullshit. I disagree. There is the truth. It's just that as individuals, we're only exposed to certain elements of it at any given time. And that might be because we weren't present for the entirety of something going down. It might be because our understanding of a situation is through the lens of an unreliable narrator. It's not that everyone has their own truth. It's that everyone has their own perception. And so those are very, very different things. The idea that there's no such thing as truth, I do disagree with inherently, and so that line, that's a personal hang up, to be fair, and not explicitly linked to this film, but that line threw me off a bit. That sent me into like a rage of indignation when that thing came out. I was just like, that's not true. So
I actually agree with that. I kind of I hate when it's really bad nowadays. YouTubers say all the time, "My truth." I'm like, no, your perspective. Just change your words. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
I mean, is it just a case of that's the language that she's chosen to use?
See,
truth is a strong word.
I think that's it, and I understand that language changes, but language can also be manipulated in that way. And it strikes me in some sense, it depends how you're using it, but there is the option there, or there is the ability there to manipulate. So when you say, my truth is that I was the victim of an unjust system that banned me from skating, and it's unfair that I had to... No, that's your perception. Like, you were, like, there was a lot of stuff going against you, but that's not entirely, that doesn't make it your truth. Truth is truth. What it means to have the truth. There is a definition for truth, and it's not. It's not the way that it's being depicted there. So
this film isn't really being an objective view on what happened. Their truth is being funneled through these kind of characters. And also there's elements of the fact that they're picking some truths and embellishing an awful lot here. So. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix.
in many ways, going to like a film like this and expecting the truth. Like, I mean, I wasn't going in this expecting a true story entirely, because it's got to be entertaining first and foremost. And if that means embellishing certain aspects of the story, or omitting certain parts of the story, or indeed, creating new personalities for real people just to make it seem more interesting, then it's all fair game at the end of the day. I think it does just come down to the context in which it's used. So as I say, like it's not specifically me having a go at this film for not being accurate or anything like that. It's just that phrase. I'm just a bit of a stickler for that specifically.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Because you have some films like I mentioned at the top of this part, Amadeus. Most of that is true, but the rivalry between the two composers is not. That's all kind of written for the film. So, I mean, that's a very traditional style biopic. And when you find that out, it's like, oh, that's a bit frustrating. Like, you don't have that here. Like, it's very upfront. The film telling you that, some of this is true, but a lot of it isn't either. And we're letting you know that from the start. I love the moments where they break the fourth wall. And I loved it where, like, Margot Robbie tries to shoot Jeff with a shotgun and then says, I definitely did not do this. Then I was like, but you definitely wanted to. So I love how the film like adds scenes in, knowing that they definitely didn't know what happened, and acknowledge it, directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall, etc. And it just expresses how she's feeling more, which is super fucking mad in that moment.
See, I think that can work though. Like, Scrubs did that well.
Yeah.
If you've watched Scrubs, I just think adding it halfway through is really odd. Like, because there was a long period of time where they didn't use it. And then they used it a lot. Like, it was really effective the first couple of times they used it, because they hadn't used it a lot at that point. But then it felt like every bloody scene was, they're going to turn to the camera and say something, and there's not a camera there.
I think in the films, I say in its defense, it kind of paints itself into a really difficult situation. Because in the first instance, when it starts, you do have these interviews to camera, and you think, right, these are a framing device to set things up. And the rest is essentially going to be some kind of recreation to support that. And then very quickly you find that that's not the case, because you have these moments that are, as you say, imaginary or that contrast. So Jeff will say something and then Tonya will say, actually, no, this didn't happen, or vice versa. She'll say, oh, he was hitting me, and he'll be like, oh, I'm actually a really meek individual. There's no way for you to be able to depict that in a way that isn't confusing, I think, because you're trying to show the perspectives of both characters there. What it should have done should have been, if it wanted to have a clear message, is probably kept to the perspective of one person. So if you don't want your breaking the fourth wall, then you have your interview bits, but you don't show Tonya chasing him with a shotgun, if that's not actually something that happened.
Yeah,
you like
just keep that in the interview.
Because I mean, you could still have him saying that as part of the interview, and then have that overlaid with him, like, I don't know, beating the shit out of her, which is what he did anyway, just to show that, that didn't actually happen. That's him just trying to make himself seem like a better... There are other ways you could do it, but stylistically, the film chose to go down this way. I personally don't mind it that much. I do think it had to go that way in order to avoid additional confusion. But, I do wonder if there's an element of it being overused at points, maybe, but yeah.
I totally get what you're saying, that sometimes it definitely draws that line of just like, are you confusing the audience too much? It depends whether you're really like trying to work out what's real and what's not, or you're just trying to go along the ride and be entertained. There is an element there, but I think for me, certainly with that particular scene where she's trying to shoot him, I think that's just a sequence where, like, that's obviously, she says that definitely didn't happen, but for me, it's like, this is what she wanted to do. This is how she was emotionally feeling right now. She just wanted to shoot him in that moment, and they're just showing it for you.
Well, at the same time, see if she took the gun and did shoot at him, I would be like, yeah.
But again, yeah, you're like, hang on, was this true? I don't know, but I love the device where like all the main characters are presented to us in these fake interviews. Like, they're all added in to like create more context, but also just for jokes, which I found really great that they went to that effort for a gag. One of my favorite examples of one of these interviews being used perfectly and literally made me laugh out loud, and I had to pause the film, is when like Tonya and Jeff like is stopped by the cops in their car, and you get like the sense that at this point in the film that we haven't seen Tonya's mother in a while, which feels like a while. Alison Janney's character. And what do? Her interview jumps in and she says, well, my storyline is disappearing right now. What the fuck? And I just thought that was genius. It's like a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break, to quote Deadpool.
I like that one. That one was good.
It feels like the filmmakers are acknowledging that, yeah, we're sorry that we haven't seen one of the best characters in the film for a while. So here's this. Genius for me. But then watching the second half of the film, I was like, well, yeah, I kind of want to see more of Alison Janney right now. Where is she? I want her back on screen, please. So it was a good joke, but then I'm like, can we see her again now, please? You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I would agree.
I miss her.
I think in terms of the interviews as well, the other one that I found slightly interesting was Sean Eckhart's interviews. Now, that was Jeff's friend. Because all of his interviews were basically VHS tapes that were older, and I'm not sure if that's because the actual guy died after a certain point, or if they're just pretending, we couldn't reach him for participating in our fabulous documentary or whatever the fact is. But like, yeah, I thought that was an interesting stylistic choice as well, because in some ways it suggests that there had already been people asking questions about this previously as well, like within the film's own universe, I guess. It suggests that this isn't the first time the people have been asked about it. It's maybe just the first time they've been asked recently, as opposed to, just at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
For me, it was like, well, I think the FBI may have actually filmed these interviews, and it's a little bit of a reconstruction in some of those, the way it's like done slightly differently.
Totally.
They're kind of riffing off actual footage there.
Yeah. I did like just the last point about the interviews as well. Margot Robbie as Tonya at points getting emotional and being like, "Oh, sorry, I've not talked about or thought about skating for a long time." As well, I thought that was really good. It really helps to contextualize when some of these interviews are taking place. Like, it's been a while. It's not as if it's the immediate aftermath. It's been a long time. So pretty good. Yeah,
you get a lot of that sense from like the costuming as well and the makeup. With Alison Janney, there's a lot of grey hair there, and Margot Robbie, she visibly looks like she's got more weight on her compared to the 80s and 90s stuff. So interesting lines, funny lines, there are a bunch. I have many notes. Well, at 27, I was the most hated man in America, maybe the world. With a mustache, I still can't apologize enough for. My name was a verb. Like, if you bash someone in the kneecap, you giggled them. That was cool though. From Sebastian Stan in one of the interviews.
You fuck dumb, you don't marry dumb.
Yep.
My favourite is I didn't swear you.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, one of them says, "Can you not swear in front of the kids, please, Lavana?" Yeah. I didn't swear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spit in her milk. That's a good one.
I like your hair pulled back like that. You look young. And she's like, "Mum, I'm 23."
Yeah. Like, that is harsh.
The mummy had the best lines for
sure.
The mum was
Alison Janney is amazing. Lick my ass, Diane. She can do a fucking triple. You two fuck yet? On their first date, she says that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the first half the mum had the best.
The first date, fucking just cringing through the screen watching that one. Like, I've never been in a situation like that where my our parents had to accompany, but you can imagine it. Like, that is utter hell because you can't talk. Like, you can't talk or anything. Like, that is absolute nightmare fuel.
But then to transition immediately into domestic violence. Like, we had no nice period of this relationship.
God.
No.
Yeah.
I would never be with someone who fucking hit me. You hit dad. That's different. Maybe you're not as good as you think. Maybe you should pick a different sport. Suck my dick, she says to the judges. And apparently, like, Tonya Harding, like, obviously never said that, but she really wished she did, apparently. And just when Janney says, fucking mustache, is kind of a funny one. I think my favorite line, though, is from Paul Waterhauser when he's kind of freaking out about the FBI is onto them. And he's like, everything is great. Yes, my parents did tape over my favorite episode of Star Trek to record the CNN coverage, but I'm keeping it together.
Yeah, that was good.
You got to get your priorities right. Star Trek is awesome.
I tell you, my favorite one was Diane yells, "I'm sorry, there's no smoking on the ice," and Tonya's mum goes, "Oh, that's okay. I'll smoke quietly then."
Yeah, that is great. Sam, have you got a favorite line for you?
It's still. I didn't swear you because that says all you. That
of
tells you all you need to know about the mum.
Yeah,
that sums her up in a single sentence. Yeah,
that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
That's the mum's character, and I love it. Other than the beating up her child, but the rest.
Did you miss her presence in the second half of this film, Sam? Or...
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I thought I said this to Calum already. I was like, she's the star. She's so warped. She's not a good person, but then no one in the film is really a good person.
No.
So, you're just choosing your favorite least good person.
Yeah. Screenplay score then, guys? What you going for?
You make a stab this time, Sam. I went last time. You make a stab and I'll go higher or lower.
8 at least.
See, I think 8's pretty fair. I think 8. Let's go 8. Let's go 8.
Oh, was that easy? Oh, nice. Look at us go.
Yeah, that easy. Yeah.
So for me, I really love the confidence in the writing here. Like, I kind of love the confidence that they're not really being scared of the material that they've got. They're really going for it. They're not scared of the controversy. I loved the interview styles and where they've inserted them. I love the creative swearing is amazing. Definitely enjoy that every time in any movie. I really enjoy it. And as I said, just I love the acknowledgement that the filmmakers are going for here. The fact that they don't have like a clear angle that they're going for in terms of who's telling the truth, so they're just going to combine all these kind of characters' testimonies and just see where it kind of goes. So I really love that confidence there, that they're telling this story through these characters' eyes and not doing an objective standard biopic of this woman's life. So I think it's really great. So I'm going to go a 9.2 for me.
I'll tell you why I didn't go for a 9. Just
sure.
to check, because I think sometimes it toes the line in mocking poorer people.
Right.
That maybe sounds ridiculous because there is a redneck background there, and they're very often the butt of the joke. But I think realistically, they've made them pretty despicable. And the thing is, no one is that evil or that daft all the time. And again, it's for comedy, but sometimes when you have a film that is commenting on how it's unjust in a way that she had no chance because she was poorer, for them to then punch down always. I don't mind sometimes, but they're always punching down on the characters that come from a poor background. I think it's a wee bit. It rubs me the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that a little bit. I think it's hard because I think in many ways to create a character from a from an incredibly deprived background who is both really, really easy to sympathize with or empathize with, but also has a real story to tell. Like, I think sometimes those things come into conflict a little bit, because you don't want to create a character where like the world happens to them. Like they are simply the recipient of every single thing that ever happens to them. They are an object upon which things are, thrown at or manifested. And so I think I kind of get what you're saying, but it's also really, really hard to create a well-rounded, I suppose, how to put this, you're looking for the struggle, or you're after the struggle, I suppose, which is present. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we do this in our daily lives as well. I don't think this is a film thing. Yeah. I think this is probably to an extent how we approach people generally in our own lives.
Yeah, it's not just Tonya. It's like the other, characters who are rednecks. Also, I'm like, God, there's nothing redeeming.
I was thinking about British films as well. I'm struggling to remember what it's called. I'm sure
it's a Clydism.
Well, there's Clydism, but it's is it The Lonely Giant or something like that, and it's about this working class boy that buys a horse, and there's a whole, like, you're meant to empathize with him, and yet he's a lot of the choices he makes are as a result of his background, but it does make it really, really hard to sympathize with what like he ends up doing, and I feel like the same is true here. And while the film tries to show, like, isn't his life tough, isn't Tonya's life tough, it does at the same time paint them as the butt of the joke at different points. Oh, look, Tonya can't afford a dress, so, like, we're going to put a snarky judge in, which is what happened to an extent, but it's just the way the film portrays it,
Yeah, it's a bit mean-spirited at points where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, like...
And it's kind of... The only reason it rubs the wrong way, see if it was like a small, like, it's a small team made this. This is like a big Hollywood movie, and they're like trying to say, "Oh, it's unfair that she didn't stand a chance," but then they're also doing the same thing. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know.
And I suppose just to round off on the whole redneck thing, I'm trying to think of a positive portrayal of rednecks in media, just generally. Like maybe
the Water Boy mum. I don't know. Towards the end,
maybe Water Boy, like maybe like. King of the Hill, I guess, kind of, but like, yeah, like, I'm not really sure. Like, I think we're struggling on that side of things, and I think it's partially it probably comes from a lot of where these films are made, and obviously, like, if it's a Hollywood film, it's West Coast America. It's very, very, it's a different type of lifestyle, and they don't necessarily understand the experiences of the things they're writing about. So. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's always looked down on, that set. It'd be different if they just didn't understand it. But it's like when you're watching, for example, like, Honey Boo Boo. People watch to laugh at them, but it's like, does that make you any better?
They were a well-meaning family, mostly, it seemed like.
Yeah, well, apart from, some of the stuff. Like...
Yeah, apart from when they weren't. Yeah. But yeah, I totally get it.
So, acting then. I love Alison Janney's performance in this film. She's incredibly fierce, and you can feel like there's like no line she won't cross, especially with her language, as we've just read out. But physically, there's a scene near the start where I think we've briefly talked about, where she's complaining that Tonya was terrible at one of her skates, even though to us she was amazing. And this argument just blows up, and she ends up throwing a knife in Tonya's arm. And Alison Janney gives off this kind of very interesting vulnerability that we've not seen before, that she can't believe that she's just thrown a knife at her daughter. It's not much, but you feel like the veil has just been lifted for a moment. So that was, as we said, like quite a shock moment. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe she's just thrown a knife.
Yeah. But the only other moment where I would say that veil lifts ever so slightly is really early on when Tonya's still young and she's skating, and she says to her mum, "I need to pee." And she's like, "No, you're not. You're going to stay out there and you're going to skate. I paid for this session." And then she pees herself, and then the mum has a slight like reaction, and then it's like, "Oh well, I guess you're going to be skating wet for the next hour then." Like, and it's just a split second,
just a moment.
But and then she just snaps back to how she normally is. Like, she does have these moments of, I guess you could say, humanity that are then just replaced by her general attitude towards, I guess, her daughter and life itself to some extent. Like, she just doesn't seem to enjoy her existence. And
she seems to hate everyone. It doesn't matter who they are. Tonya included. But again, there's another moment near the end between Robbie and Alice and Janney, where Janney comes to Robbie's house with a load of reporters outside, and Janney is trying to be genuine and say that she's got her back, and then she finds it really hard to even hug her daughter. And then when Robbie finds the tape recorder in Janney's pocket, you're like, whoa, was this just all fake, or was she still trying to be honest and genuine with her daughter here, but just happens to have a tape recorder in her pocket for a bit of cash for the reporters? I don't know. It's an interesting situation there.
And it could be both, to be fair.
Yeah,
like,
it could be
both. Like, because I suspect that moment took her aback slightly. I mean, hypothetically, was she going in there to get something for the reporters to report on? Then, you know, if she's done, suddenly goes in and she's having this moment with her daughter that she wasn't expecting, that could have been like a turning point in their relationship, which then wasn't allowed to happen because obviously she got caught out. But we saw her paying like members of the crowd to boo her daughter earlier in the film as well. Like, so it's not out of the realms of possibility that she would be just taking some money to go in and get her. But yeah, I do feel like she's a hard character to read, and in that way, and in some ways, I think that makes her all the better, because we are left asking these questions. Like, we don't really have a definitive answer. So I don't know. I think that's really powerful.
What do you reckon, Sam, in that scene? Was she being genuine or just wanted some cash for the reporters?
I think it's a mixture. I was I didn't expect it to be in her pocket. I'm going to be honest. Like, that did actually take me back.
I don't think anyone did.
No, but I was disappointed. I was like, actively, I was like, oh, she's got someone at least, and then she's like, oh, yeah. I think she was probably, how I'm viewing it is, she took the opportunity that she was given. She wouldn't have done it off her own back to go and, you know, give her support. But I think when she was in there, she probably was like, well, you know, I'm doing this anyway. And then she ruined it by asking the question so obviously. Like, that wasn't a subtle way to ask. As soon as she said that, I was like, all right, I'm going to.
Margot Robbie is amazing in this too for me. Like, the film is directed with a lot of like flair and style throughout, and a lot of the performances like complement that style. But there's a moment towards the end, just before she goes out to compete at the Lillehammer Olympics, I think, where we have just a simple objective close-up shot on Margot Robbie looking directly to camera, applying her really bad makeup. I love the way she just goes from like looking quite emotional to then grinning quite quickly and really struggling with that. And I just thought that was just a great moment for her and the director, where it's just really simple, you know, way to show off Margot's talents as an actor.
Yeah, no, she was really good. That was the trailer shot as well. Like, I was like, oh, that's a trailer shot. Sebastian Stan as well even did a good job, because he's obviously like super attractive guy, so he's got that going for him. Because otherwise, why would you stay with, you know, your husband like that? So you would need someone who is good looking to convince an audience. I know that's probably not how that happened in real life, because that's just not how love and relationships work.
No,
but I think for an audience, you probably do need someone who's like got something there. You're like, at least he's hot. Otherwise, you're like, why are you staying with him? He was awful to her. So he did a really good job of being awful. That's what I'll say. Like, a really good job. The only person I didn't really like, and you're gonna not like this one, was Paul Walter Hauser.
Okay.
Because I think it's very easy to play the fool, but it's not easy to play the fool sympathetically.
Oh, I was never sympathetic towards him. I was very much laughing at him.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, I feel like there should have been something there. Otherwise, just like, he's a person to laugh at, and I'm like, what's the point in you if we're just going to mock someone for being silly? You know, like.
Okay. See, I liked the portrayal, but I didn't like the character. So I thought the acting in the role was really good, but I didn't like the motivations behind the character itself. And again, I don't know if this is...
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, no, well, I know, but I mean, I don't know to what extent this is based off of... I say motivations. It's not so much that. How do I put this? When he's talking to the interviewer about, oh, I'm this world-renowned bodyguard, and I'm part of the...
He's like, no, you're not.
And she's like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am.
He's like, but I am, though. Yeah, maybe it's a writing issue for me rather than him. I think he's just not given stuff to work with to make him anything other than like, let's laugh at this man. But that's kind of like, is that all there is?
Well, because he's depicted as being like I mean, he's literally living in his mum's basement. Like, Mom, we need more food. Like, Mom, call her back.
Very nice basement, I must say.
Yeah, like, but I mean, like, it's very, you know, it's the typical online depiction of, like, you know, the perfect loser, basically, and yet he does have a career. I mean, who knows how well that is, how good it's going? Clearly not that well, but but like he's got, I don't know, this unearned confidence as well, and then he goes out of his way, obviously, to send Tonya the threats, and then goes and initiates the call for Nancy to get attacked as well, and like he's just
but off his own back too, so he's like too silly to do other things, but he can plan that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But not plan it well. It's very
Yeah.
That's again the unreliable narrator thing. It's like who knows?
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's it.
How involved others were. Yeah.
Going back to Sebastian Stan, who plays Jeff, like he's quite extraordinary as well. Like he seems quite quiet and calm and collected to begin with, but becomes very unhinged in moments. Like especially that scene where he basically breaks into Tanya's house, I think, and threatens to shoot her, and then himself. Like he's amazing in that moment. You're just like you have no idea what is going to happen, and it's all through Sebastian Stan there for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. That's a really powerful couple of minutes. He's pointing the gun at her. He's pointing at himself. Like she can't run without him shooting at her. And then as soon as he shoots, he's like, I'm sorry, everything's fine. Get in the car, get in. And you think that's, how do you cope? You know, like with, like, I mean, just like, I'm bearing in mind this is, I mean, the gun thing, sure, is a bit of a one-off, but like in terms of him being a bit of a head case, that's been an ongoing problem for years for her at this point.
Yeah.
You don't come out the other side of that without some serious damage, basically. It's terrifying, and that's kind of like, I guess that's the epitome of the whole thing, is like that's the final sort of moment of it all, but like it's terrifying.
It's just these moments of calm. He has this very like quiet sense about his acting, and then all of a sudden he might just hit her in moments that you don't expect at all, with no motivation really. Yeah, it's quite an extraordinary performance.
It is, and it takes a lot to do a role like that as well, because we know how people are. Some people are a little bit crap at separating like fiction from reality and that sort of thing. And you don't take a role like that lightly. Because there are going to be people who are like, oh, so that's how he is or whatever. And it's just like, it's acting, you clown. But that is, you know, people are like that. And if you're going to do a role, the other thing is, if you're going to do a role like that, you have to really go for it. Like you can't half-heartedly like swing a punch at someone or like backhand them or whatever. Like you have to really go for it. And he does. Like she gets knocked around a lot in this film, like whether she's getting knocked against a cabinet or she's getting like her nose like palmed or whatever. Like she gets really knocked around in this, and I believe all of it. Like it's all of it's really convincing. There's not a bit where I'm just like, oh, that looks a bit fake or whatever. Like it looks good throughout. It's incredibly well structured in that way, and I think his commitment to doing that is. It's just a really strong performance overall.
Yeah, you definitely, certainly in those little fight sequences, you can't see where they've inserted the stunt people. You feel like they are getting her. Obviously, you hope they're not, but you definitely can't see the joins, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Favorite performance, guys? Sam, favorite performance for you?
Definitely the mum, Tonya. Alison.
Janney.
Alison Janney as Lavona. Yeah.
Janney. Okay. Fabulous. My favourite. She's good at being bad. I'm not saying she's a good character, but she's fab. Closely followed by, I don't know, I can't choose between Sebastian Stan or Margot Robbie because they both did really good in their own ways. So,
right.
But yes, the mum slightly up there.
Callum?
I'm leaning towards Sebastian Stan, honestly. I think Margot Robbie might be my close second, with Alison Janney as my third, for if no other reason than while she's a lot of fun, the story would...
She goes missing.
Yeah. Well, the story would still work without her, effectively. Like, I mean, there are key points here. She obviously adds to it. Like, she helps provide in Tonya's background and adds a little bit of that. But there's a lot here that would still be interesting without her being there. So I don't know that she's necessarily an essential, integral part to the film.
But see, that's why I'd say her performance is so good, though, because she's not. But, like, it leaves an impact, her being there.
Yeah, I'm going Alison Janney as well. And I was definitely craving more of her, certainly in the second half of the film. You definitely feel her absence towards the end. I'm going her. She's just so fierce and just outrageous at times. It's like, oh my God. And she actually won an Oscar for this.
Oh, did she?
Well.
Oh, well deserved.
Yeah, well deserved, yeah. Acting score, guys, what are you going for I, Tonya?
It's got to be at least a...
I'm saying, I would say a 9.
9. Yeah, I was going to say 9.
Yeah.
9. We'll do that then. 9.
Okay.
9.
Yeah, I think the acting in this is pretty spectacular across the board. I mean, even Margot Robbie, she goes through a range of emotions in this as well. Yeah, just the skill level there of, because she's, angry, pissed off and sad in a lot of moments and a lot of scenes in this, and she judges those particular moments really well, and plays off her co-stars so well. So I'll go like a 9.3.
Nice.
Just really entertaining. I think that's the one aspect of this film that you get the most entertainment value out of, is the acting compared to anything else, I think. 9.3 for me.
But why 0.3? What's the difference between the 0.3 and the 0.2 you gave for the screenwriting? Explain to me.
It just edges it. Just edges it. Right. Let's add up the scores then for I, Tonya. I, Tonya gets 51.1. So it is a very, very narrow victory over Tick Tick Boom that got 50.5. So very, very close.
That is the way we roll here.
Yeah.
That is how we do it. We want to be close together on the Instagram post. We want to see both the names.
Yeah. So next episode, as Dune Part 2 is out. Extremely excited for that one. We are, of course, talking Denis Villeneuve films 2, as we have actually done another one already. So we're doing another one for next episode. Guests for that one, a new guest, the Revisionists Almanac podcast. So that's very exciting. Guys, you have been amazing as always. It's great to hear your insights. This is your opportunity again to tell us about your podcast, and where can we find you?
We are One of Us is Bored. We're available wherever you get your podcasts right now, and you can follow us on Instagram at One of Us is Bored. Come and join us for monthly themed fun around a variety of different topics. Next couple of months, throughout February, we're doing an Indiana Jones month. We've got Sam's birthday month next month. It's March, so it's what is it next month? It's
my sister's childhood fever dream movies.
Yeah, childhood fever dream movies from Sam's sisters. We've got the Unnecessary sequel month coming up as well, and a few other bits and pieces. So yeah, if any of that sounds good, then hop on over and check us out, please. That would be great.
Excellent. Right, guys, it's time to say goodbye. It's a goodbye from Sam. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from Calum. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And it's goodbye from me. Yeah, I'm not going to try ice skating. I'm just not. I've fallen on my ass too many times. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off. Thank you.